Hello everyone, Bible believers around the world. In today's video, we're just going to be discussing some real food for thought about the Europeans. So we all know that the Europeans removed many books from the Bible, specifically the books of the Apocrypha. But most of us don't stop to think about which books were removed. And recently, I had the thought about the removal of 1st and 2nd Maccabees from the scriptures not being a coincidence. And I'm going to, elaborate a bit on that right now. So, 1st and 2nd Maccabees, the 1st and 2nd Maccabees, show the descendants of Japheth in a very bad light. A very bad light, because they're the people who oppress God's chosen people and force the Israelites to do wicked things. And these are books that the Europeans were quick to remove. And even in modern times, the Europeans are still quick to say that these books are not legitimate and that they're fake history. They don't line up with real history. The events of Maccabees never happened and that they're fake. Keep in mind that 1st and 2nd Maccabees really show the descendants of Japheth being evil. Okay? Keep that in mind. Now, I'm going to talk about Christianity for a little bit, growing up in the Christian church and stuff. But mainly stuff I've witnessed since I've been out of Christianity and Most High Yah's brought me into the truth. Many Christians, specifically white Christians, obviously, avoid Ezekiel 38 like the plague. They just completely avoid it like the flu. Now, what does Ezekiel 38 and 1st and 2nd Maccabees have in common? They are showing the descendants of Japheth in a bad light. It's very few Christians who will want to talk about Ezekiel 38. And if they do talk about Ezekiel 38, they often twist it to try and make the prophecy only about Russia. They'll say, oh, Gog and Magog is Russia. It's Putin. It's evil Putin and it's Russia. But that's not true, though, because all of the descendants of Japheth are mentioned there. Obviously, you have guys like Tubal and Javan who aren't specifically in Gog and Magog, but are mentioned in other prophecies. But you have the house of Togarmah. That includes the Turkish Khazars, the Ashkenazi Jew. So they're part of Gog and Magog. The bands of Gomer. We've learned in the Japheth, the true father of the Caucasoid peoples lesson, that Gomer is the father of many different nations of white people. So there's many different kinds of white people who come from Gomer. So there's tons of different white people who are wrapped up in the bands of Gomer, a lot. Obviously Magog, Russia, but that also includes Ukraine, which you don't hear mentioned, and then the Turkish peoples, Togarmah. So they avoid Ezekiel 38 like the plague. And if they do, like I said, they try to make it about Russia, but in reality, it's about 99% of them. Okay? So there's another thing. All right? But here's where it gets crazy, though. This is where it gets really crazy. So these facts are a huge hole in the Esau's the white man doctrine. And the Caucasians' behavior towards Ezekiel 38 in the Maccabees books is a hole in the Esau's the white man doctrine. And here's why. Because throughout history, the Caucasians never removed any of the key books that discuss the Hebrew Edomites and how to identify them. They never removed the book of Genesis. They never did. That talks about the red and hairy and all that other type of stuff. They didn't remove that. They never removed Obadiah. As a matter of fact, back when I was in Christianity, they had a song called the Bible Song. And one of the lyrics in their song was literally Obadiah. So the Caucasians are not afraid of Obadiah. They don't even care. And all those verses about Ezekiel, and Ezekiel and Jeremiah and Isaiah that talk about the destruction of Edom, they don't care. They didn't remove them. So it really begs the question. The one West camps would be like, oh, Esau's put other people's names on himself, and, he don't want people to know that he's Esau. But that's completely destroyed with what's going on. Because if the white man was Esau, he would be trying to censor all of the stuff in the Bible about Esau instead of trying to censor all the stuff about Japheth. because they are the Japhites. They're not Edomites. So, and it shows in their behavior on why they do not want First and Second Maccabees to be believed as Bible canon. It shows why they avoid Ezekiel 38 like the plague. They don't care about the judgment of Edom because they know they're not Esau. The judgment of Edom, as we've covered many times on this channel before, is talking about a nation of Negroes, Negro Edomites. So they couldn't care less about that. So as you've seen throughout history, none of the stuff about Esau has ever been censored. It's super easy to go into the Bible and find stuff about Esau. But if you want to find stuff about the judgment of Japheth, they've put up a lot of roadblocks because they know that's them. They know that's them. And they don't want to be seen as the bad guys in Scripture. So they'll talk about, Noah's Ark and talk about how they're the descendants of Japheth. But then they'll skip all the way to the New Testament, with Yahushua, Christ, and, mercy and grace and all that other type of stuff. But they don't talk about the futures, the prophecies, like Ezekiel 38, and then First and Second Maccabees and what went on there. They don't talk about that. Now, of course, for some clarification, because people will take my words and, twist it into something that I was never saying. Not all of the descendants of Japheth are wicked. Not all of the descendants of Japheth are bad. There's many descendants of Japheth all over the world who are righteous in the covenant and are dearly loved by the Most High Yah. I'm not saying that all of the descendants of Japheth are wicked. I'm not saying that. But it's interesting to see, though, how many of the Japhetic teachers want to censor and have censored throughout history anything in the Bible that shows the descendants of Japheth as being the bad guys. It's very, very interesting. Meanwhile, as we've mentioned, all of the stuff about Esau has been untouched. And they're not afraid to talk about it. Why? Because it's not about them. I mean, they literally put Obadiah as one of the lyrics in their children's song. I mean, I remember, people, white people at my old churches, singing the Bible song, and there'd be like, Jonah, Obadiah, like there's Obadiah just coming, like, because it's not about them. Anyways, I hope you found this video interesting. I certainly did. And bye for now.